The next section that I'm going to talk about is, why would somebody even want to file bankruptcy? Well, there's no longer the wild, wild west where, people on the East Coast can just flee from their creditors or their horrible lives and start over. There's not a lot of business opportunity and things like that out there that just are in abundance. There's no new world. There's the third world we could all try to dominate, but, you can't flee there without some money. The Europeans, when things got bad, they just shipped, everybody to the new world to work off their debts. But so without all of those kind of outlets, you've got people in situations who've got debts. Most of them are honest folks. I mean, I've been doing this for 25 years. I've probably talked to 30,000 people at least. I mean, I filed at least 4,000 or 5,000 bankruptcies and talked to a whole lot more than that. Pretty much everybody in my office is mortified. They don't want to be there. They cry. They're not crocodile tears. They're not happy to see me. Most of them have been going through a divorce. They've been their business has gone under, and they've sunken everything into it, and including all their dreams have been destroyed. They've lost a child. They've got cancer. Sometimes multiple combinations of all these problems, and they're in to see me as a last resort. But yet, if they didn't come see me, their creditors will call them every day from 8 in the morning until 8 at night, sometimes till 10. They will file a lawsuit against them, and the sheriff will show up at work, serve them with papers. It's not very nice being on the collection end of being a debtor. So, the reason that someone would file bankruptcy is to stop the harassment, mainly, because if you can't pay, you can't pay. I mean, I've had clients where a guy told me that he was at his father's funeral, and he was like at the house, milling around after the funeral, and a creditor called his cell phone. Now, why my client answered it, I don't know. But he answered it, and the creditor was like asking him when he was going to pay him, and he was like, I'm sorry, my father's just died, and I'm, indisposed right now. And the guy's like, oh, your father's just died. Well, you should inherit something. When can you pay me? That is the mentality of most of the people that are out there doing collecting. I mean, there are rules they're supposed to follow, but they're pretty toothless. And, there's really nothing there to protect people. And when you get sick of all of that, you've sometimes filed bankruptcy to make that stop. We don't have wage garnishment in South Carolina, but school-owned people can garnish wages, ex-wives, ex-husbands, taxing authorities. All of these people can take up to sometimes 25% of your income, your gross income. And when they start deducting that from your pay, and I rarely see that in this state, but to stop that and then pay your debts over a longer period of time, or maybe even get rid of debts that you could otherwise get rid of in a bankruptcy so they don't do that, those would be reasons to file. In Georgia, for example, they have wage garnishment. Any creditor can do wage garnishment. They have 3 or 4 times the bankruptcies we have in South Carolina. South Carolina has one of the lowest bankruptcy rates in the country. North Carolina doesn't have wage garnishment anymore. I think it used to when I first started practicing. But the same people who can garnish wages in South Carolina can garnish wages in North Carolina. And North Carolina's garnishment statute, because it has one, says that if you work in Charlotte or North Carolina, if you work in North Carolina and your company's payroll people are in a state that allows garnishment, and they follow the procedure in that state to get garnishment in that state of your pay in Idaho or whatever, they can garnish your wages. Visa can garnish your wages in Charlotte, and I've seen that. So stopping that is very important. If you have judgments against you, when a creditor's gotten a judgment, they sued you and won, they get a judgment. A judgment is a lien on your house. You can't borrow money or repay debts till the judgment is taken care of. You can't sell your house without taking care of the judgment. Most houses in this economy especially are safe because the equity that the people have in them is not worth more than they are allowed to protect or exempt. And I'll go over exemptions in a minute. But, you know, the sheriff still, after you get a judgment, will come out with a piece of paper that says, pay us in 5 days or we're going to execute the judgment. I mean, just the word sounds kind of scary. And if you have property that is not, if you have property that is worth more than your exemption amount, like you have the exemption for a car, for example, you can have $5,350 worth of exemption or equity in a car in South Carolina. So if you have a car that has no lien on it and it's worth $5,350, the sheriff can never take your car. It is never going to be worth more than you are allowed to protect as a citizen of South Carolina. But if you have a $10,000 car, the sheriff can take your car, sell it, pay the sheriff's costs, pay you $5,350, and take the rest to pay off Visa because they have executed their judgment. To prevent all that, you may want to file a bankruptcy. And you know, some other reasons somebody might file bankruptcy, excuse me, if you're getting divorced, you know, I did divorce work some for 10 years, and nobody ever goes to family court and can afford to pay all the bills of a couple of two when they're in two different houses. It is an excellent strategy to file bankruptcy before you go get a divorce and then get rid of all those debts, because you can file together, separated as a married couple, get rid of the debts. Then you go deal with the rest of your life when you end up getting divorced. You deal with the children, you deal with custody, child support, things like that. And you don't end up with a family court order that says both of you are obligated to pay debts neither one of you can afford, and you end up arguing back and forth and wasting your time and money in court, never really accomplishing anything in family court. Some people come in, they've got cancer, they're dying, they've got $500,000. Somebody came in with $4 million in medical bills yesterday. Yeah, and they're not dead. They just were in the hospital for a year because somebody cut the wrong nerve when they were doing surgery, and nobody's agreeing to pay for it. The statute of limitations ran on the malpractice case because he was in the hospital for the year while the statute ran. Nobody will take his case. But he's got actually $4.5 million in medical bills. There's not much he can do to ever pay that back in the rest of his life, and he's in a wheelchair. So basically, when people are dying, you can file a bankruptcy, get rid of the debts, and that way the family homestead isn't lost in the probate court paying doctor bills and the last expenses that they had for their life. That's a way to do it, or a bankruptcy is a way to deal with those issues. I've had people come in who filed bankruptcy. We filed bankruptcy for them because they were in the military or they were going into the military, and they wanted a high-level security clearance job, and they said, you either need to pay off these debts or get rid of them in a bankruptcy. So we filed bankruptcy because you're a security risk. If you owe a lot of money, you might be apt to be bribed. That's their thinking. So it actually helps you in the military. I've had people do the same thing in like law enforcement. And ultimately, it's a moral issue on one level. I mean, I wouldn't want to file bankruptcy. Nobody wants to file bankruptcy. But you get past the point where you worry about the morality of it, and it is a business decision. The lenders made business decisions when they lent you the money. Most people want to pay back their friends and their family that lent them the money if they are able. But, Visa made a conscious decision when it decided to give somebody who made $20,000 a year, never made another dime than that in their life, and has charged them 33% interest, for this $10,000 they lent them, and didn't check to see that they might have had 4 or 5 other credit cards with the same limit. That's a business decision. It's a bad one, but, so I feel like the banks use the law in their favor, or the laws that are in their favor, to collect their debts. And the only thing out there really for debtors is bankruptcy. That or, fleeing the state. But they can pretty well find you anywhere these days. And that's basically my take on why you would want to file a bankruptcy. Nobody wants to, but sometimes you just have to. And it seems like a good business decision. You get your discharge. And I'll talk about the benefits of that in a minute when I'm talking about what to do after bankruptcy.